Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you've joined us from today. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is George, and I've been working as a digital marketing consultant here at Sitecore Benelux in France for the past 5 years. I'll be your moderator for today, and as such, I'd like to welcome everyone to this webinar on strategic personalization, hosted by Sitecore and presented by partner Proximity BBDO. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to go over some housekeeping rules just to make sure that you all enjoy the best possible experience during this webinar. Now, all attendees are on mute. This is simply so we don't all talk through each other. However, if you have any questions, please use the chat panel to your left to ask us anything you'd like, and we'll attempt to answer it at the end. Furthermore, this webinar is also being recorded, and you'll be able to watch it on demand whenever you want. Now, the slides are also provided in a PDF format in the bonus resource panel to your left, so feel free to download them. Now, a little bit about Sitecore for those of you who don't know Sitecore. Sitecore provides the only integrated experience management platform combining content, data, and commerce in one. With a leading web content management system and commerce platform at its core, Sitecore empowers you to market in context. Anyway, today we have Jonathan Bobo with us, who is the Technical Director at Proximity BBDO. Jonathan will share with us today the insights on how to approach strategic personalization at scale using Sitecore. He's also joined by his colleague, Adarsh Kumar. Now, Jonathan, I'm very excited to have you with us today, so without further ado, please take it away.
Thank you, George, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. So this is Jonathan Bobo. So I'm the CTO at Proximity Paris, and I'm also a CTO at Proximity India Nation. So I want to run you guys through the personalization in a scaled manner today with Sitecore Experience Platform. So let's actually jump into it. So the personalization has been a buzzword for a while already, right? It's been in the digital marketing landscape for more than 10 years now, and everybody's talking about personalization. But the reality is that if you actually want to do personalization, there are a few questions that you need to answer before you even get into it. As a brand, what do I expect from personalization? As a consumer, what do my consumer would expect from the personalized experience, right? This is very critical. The reality is that today, the technology is not a limiting factor, right? The technology is going to make things easier, but where we should start is at strategy level. We need to think about these questions even before we jump into it. Right? And actually, when we're talking personalization, as you have websites or other type of digital properties, by the way, with a lot of content, a lot of traffic, that only means that there is a lot of data to play with in order to get the best possible personalization in place. So let's look at how this can be done with Sitecore Experience Platform. So I think you all heard about personalization at different stages, right? You have heard about the rule-based personalization. This is, I would say, the old-fashioned way to do personalization. If this, then that, right? If the consumer has done this in the past, then we want him to take this action afterwards, right? And now what we really want to start looking at, right, if we want to do actual experience management, is look at how we want to drive the consumer to navigate through the strategy that we have built for the website, right? So this is what we would call the goal-based personalization. So what are we talking about here? What we are saying here is that as a marketer for a website, I want to define what are the different stages, right? The strategy stages that I want my consumers to go through, right? And then personalization would only enable the websites to encourage the consumer to move from each of these strategy stages to the next one, right? So this is actually how we would design personalization based on strategy insights. We'll get more into it. So what do we have as tools? The main tool we're going to leverage here, out of many other tools, by the way, is a Sitecore Experience Profile. Right. So if you are aware of Sitecore, you have probably already seen this experience profile multiple times. You have seen all the different data that can be pulled out of it. Basically, every single consumer action could be captured into XDB, the big data database of Sitecore, right? Like even when the consumer is just clicking on a banner. And by the way, Sitecore can also capture whenever a consumer has viewed a banner, which is very powerful, right? So all this information put together next to the different actions that the consumer has taken before and after he came to the website are used. And by the way, this could also be the case even if the consumer did not register for your website, right? Because what we have seen is that so far it was fairly easy to check what are the actions that were taken by your registered consumer by looking at the database, but now it becomes really interesting because even before we actually have the consumer in the database, we are able, in the CRM database, we are able to start personalizing for him. Right? And of course, when you start talking personalization, it often has to do with tagging. We will see that we have also options to make this step a bit more easy. We'll see that with machine learning, right? So personalization obviously means data, right? It always starts with data. Either it is the consumer profile data, right? The traffic source, where does the consumer come from? What are his motivations to come to the website, right? Or what are the different type of actions that have been taken by the consumer on the website, right? So what is the consumer interested into, right? This is the type of information we want to use. As for the content information, we want to check what is the category that the content belongs to, right? But, and really most likely, how does this specific content perform, right, based on the business objectives? This is something that we will see. And we'll potentially have some time to talk the fuzzy logic as well, which is an interesting approach to make sure that we don't promote the same piece of content again and again. So let's now look at the different approaches that we have at hand to deliver personalization on Sitecore, right? One first approach would be what we call the content performance personalization. What we want to do here is really to look at how we can influence consumers, right, to take marketing actions, right? This is what we mean when you're saying content are promoted based on their proven ability to drive marketing goals, right? We really want to look at the marketing goals and how the content actually drive these, right? That's the first one. The second one is a bit more traditional, right? What we want to do here is to look at what the consumer like, right? What is their affinity with this category of content so that we could make sure that they see the type of content that they like in the website so that they can stay longer and eventually take more engaging marketing actions. And the last type of personalization we want to explain here is going to be very exciting. It's going to be basically mix both options, right, in a very smart way, right? So you may want to be able to look at the pieces of content which have performed well for the other consumers who are interested in the same things as you, right? So thanks to that, we could be very accurate, right? And this could be very useful when you come to websites which have a lot of content. We'll get there. So let's start with the first option. So obviously, when a brand actually builds a website, right, there is always marketing objectives behind it. There is always a way to measure what is the return on investment, right? What do I really want the consumer to do on the website, et cetera, et cetera. And what we have seen and what is already happening right now is that the marketers would always be looking at how the website is performing, how the content displayed on the website are performing, and would revise his strategy, right, on the go, because the brand would like to make sure that if this content is not performing well, then it should be replaced by another content next time. So what we are seeing here is that the content strategy is going to be key, right, for a website, right? So the fact that with Sitecore now, we may be able to automate some part of this intelligence, it could be very interesting, right? Let's see how this could be achieved and what we're talking about when we are saying automate a part of the intelligence. So typically, when we are talking content performance on Sitecore, this is what we're talking about. We are really talking about looking at the strategy, right, and reflecting the marketing goals into the system. So how is this done? Sitecore has the concept of Sitecore goals, right? With these goals, right, it's very simple to actually say that this is my primary marketing objective and this is the next one. So typically, if we take the example, and by the way, we will be using the examples of a simple financial website across this presentation, so we will be using finance terminology here, right? So let's say that the fact that a consumer wants to become a visitor wants to become a lead and register, that could be one marketing goal, right? Downloading a brochure could be a marketing goal as well, right? Requesting for a callback could be a very strong marketing goal as well, right? Because this means that the consumer wants to start engaging, right? So as soon as the marketing goals are defined, that's only one step. The next step is to decide what is the marketing goal, right, which takes priority over the other ones. And basically what we need to do here is to prioritize each marketing goal using what Sitecore calls the engagement value points. So what we are saying here is that we are going to attach registration with an engagement value point of 10, for example, right, for our finance website. And then someone who actually requests for a callback, we would consider that he is much more engaged because he is actually willing to start talking with us. We are going to give it 30 points, right? As soon as we have done this mapping, right, this is what we were talking about when we were saying we want to take the strategy and reflect the strategy into the system. This is what we mean. And this is all configuration. There is no development here, right? Once we have done step 1 and 2, we want to move to step 3. And on step 3, what we're going to do is basically to say when the consumer clicks here, then it means that he has triggered this specific goal. If the consumer has performed a registration, then we should trigger the right goal in Sitecore if he has done this, etc. So in this step, we could achieve this in many different ways. Some of them are very easy. We could just associate a goal to a link, to a click, and some of them could be a bit more complex. We could say we want to check that we have the right backend system callback before we actually consider that it's not just an intent, but it's an actual action, right? So this step could be a bit more tricky, but again, it could be done in a very simple way as well. So as soon as this is done, actually the configuration is done. So we have done the right setup to be able to score all the content that will be browsed by the consumers, right? Once we have done that, then Sitecore will start leveraging what we call the value per visit. What is the value per visit? So basically, the value per visit is the way that Sitecore has chosen, right, to score the content. So to put it simply, I would recommend that we look at the example we have in the last 3 bullet points here, right? Let's say that we have the registration goal we mentioned before, right? And we have 2 banners here, one banner A, one banner B, right? Both of them are means to drive registration, right? And are displayed in many different places in the website. So the banner A would have been clicked 100 times, right? And out of these 100 times, only 10 times led to a registration, right? So basically, the ratio is not that big, right? So if you make the math, we would consider that the value per visit for this banner is 1.0, okay? Let's consider the banner B now. It has been clicked only 30 times, right? Only 30 times. But out of these 30 times, already 5 of them have led to a registration, right? So again, here, if we do the math, what we'll find out is that the banner B is more efficient than the banner A. So this is where we are going to use the value per visit to confirm that the banner B has a higher propensity to drive registration. This is how Sitecore is doing it in the background, in a very simple way. There is no need for Sitecore developers to do something here. It's already out of the box. So let's see how it comes into life. So let's say that we have this, same example, this our finance website. On top of a landing page, we have a banner. This banner is supposed to drive consumer to register, right? And there are three potential banners to display in this placeholder, in this green placeholder at the top. We have 3 possible banners to display there. One of them would say join us, the other one would say don't miss this opportunity, and the last one would say register now. Again, this is not A/B testing. What we are saying here is that these 3 banners probably and necessarily appear somewhere else on the website, because if they don't appear somewhere else, they will not be able to be scored, right? So we need this banner to be present across the website so that consumer could run through them and Sitecore to rate them, right? And thanks to that, if an anonymous visitor comes into to the website and we don't know anything about this visitor, right, what we want to do is to check the banner that will drive the best chances for him to convert. So we want to take the banner that has the highest value per visit. So this is done in a very simple way through Sitecore with the personalization rules, right? It's very easy to do it. We just configure the personalization rules to say, take the banner with the highest value per visit. And this is how this consumer would see banner B. Okay, so quickly going through the takeaway of this solution, it's going to promote the content which have the highest value for business, right? It's going to leverage out of the box Sitecore, and the effort for development is very limited, as I said, right? And there is no human intervention here apart from applying the strategy into the system, right? And again, we can talk about this in the questions, but there is a way to make sure that we don't keep promoting the same content using some fuzzy logic mechanism, right? So again, one watch out here, this solution is interesting and very good when it comes to performance. However, we have seen that it starts being very interesting when you have many contents to pull from for the personalization. If you have very few contents, we would probably recommend to use a different option. Now let's start to look at the second option we have. This second option is based on affinity. Like I said, we already know this is something which is not brand new, right? Looking at what the consumer likes and promoting the right content for him. What we have been doing for decades was to actually organize content, I would say, in content categories, eventually using tags to have some kind of cross-category navigation. But this is definitely this would rely a lot on the consumer himself to actually browse from one section to another. What we want to do with personalization is making sure that we can kind of guess what it is that the consumer is interested into, right? And push content that is related to this context. So let's look at how it works. Sitecore has implemented the concept of profiles. So this is not new in Sitecore, but it has been optimized ongoingly since a few versions already. So now we have these profile patterns, profile cards that we can play with. And again, if you look at how this is organized in the marketing control panel in Sitecore, it could be done in many different ways, but it could be done in a very simple way as well, right? You could just define your profile card, right, and just create a few keys, just like we have done here. We have taken an example of the finance website again. Let's say we want to check what type of finance profile each visitor has, right? Is the visitor more interested into B2B, into bank to bank, right? Or is he more interested into large corporate business, or into personal family finance because he's just a family guy who is trying to invest for his family, etc. Or is that person more interested into his company financial services, right? So these are the type of keys that we can have in this finance profile. So what we are going to do with this, again, this is just configuration in Sitecore to go ahead and create this profile into Sitecore, right? And what we can do is now, once we have the profile, we can go ahead and use this profile to tag content. So let me go through the process to have this to work. So first thing is to tag the content, right? I'm saying here each piece of content, but actually the reality is that we don't have to tag every single piece of content. Our recommendation would be to tag the most relevant, the key content, right? The content that are the most viewed, for example, right, should be tagged so that when consumer browse through this content in step 2, right, Sitecore would automatically figure out what is the finance profile of the visitor who is browsing. Because if the consumer is browsing content which are tagged with the B2B finance key, then we would assume that he may be interested into B2B. So what Sitecore will do is look at all the browsing history of the consumer, and based on this browsing history, figure out what is the pattern that is being seen here. Okay. So I'm moving to next. So let's take the same example again. So we have again this landing page, right? And this time please see that we are considering that the consumer is authenticated, right? He has already done a lot of visits on the website. We know him. We even know that he has a finance profile in Sitecore, and this finance profile in Sitecore is showing that he's interested into small and medium businesses, right? So we already know the consumer, right? And here we have this placeholder again, and this placeholder can pull from many different banners, right? But each of these banners have been tagged by a webmaster or a content author, right, with the finance profile as well, right? So banner A got the B2B profile key, the banner B got the small medium business profile key, and the banner C is tagged with family. You can see that we have a fourth banner here, which is tagged with default, right? So there are multiple. The reason that we need this default is to make sure that here, in this case, we know the consumer. So based on this tagging, it's easy to confirm that the personalization should display the banner B for him, right? But if we move to an example where we don't know the consumer, right, Sitecore may need to have a way to decide still what is the banner to display. So there are two ways to do this, right? One way is to actually have a default value in the profile, but we would not recommend that. The second way would be to have a default rule in the personalization engine, right? So what we would do in Sitecore in a very simple manner is to go on this placeholder, right, and say, hey, so we have 4 pieces of content, right? If the and look at the consumer profile, finance profile, right, and just pull the content which is tagged with his finance profile. But if you don't have the finance profile for him, then go ahead and take the default banner, right? So this is how it works. And again, if you have heard what I said just now, the if part only happens when we want to go to the default. As long as we are playing with personalization, we don't need the if. The only thing we need to do to say is pull the content that fits with the consumer profile. And this is automated. Okay. So quickly, what do we need to make this work? The first step is to do creating the profiles in Sitecore. Then the profiles need to be attached to the content, right? Once this is done, Sitecore will keep enriching visitors' profile based on the content they're browsing, right? And then when visitors would reach a page where we can recommend content, then Sitecore would look at how the consumer is profiled and pull the right piece of content depending on it. So a few takeaways for this option. So this option is more suited to promote content that the consumer is keen to like. Right? We really want here to fit with his expectations more than the actual business expectations. Right? The second thing here is that this is going to leverage the Sitecore behavior profile and not the performance anymore. Right? The effort here, to be honest, is non-existent in terms of development. It really had to do with a lot of not a lot, but just configuration here. Okay. The behavior profile is calculated every time someone is clicking on content, right, and going to the XDB. And there is a lot of manual effort that may be required in terms of tagging. So this is the point where we need to be wary about this option. It's a good option, but it's putting a lot of responsibility on the way the content has been tagged. That means that we need to be able to trust the content tagging and the people who are tagging them. So our recommendation here, if the content pool is big, is to have a proper tagging governance, right, to define how content should be tagged. Otherwise, this could be a bit less relevant because if the content tagging is not good, obviously the recommendation may not fit neither. So there may be some ways to actually make this a bit easier, right? If you think about a website with thousands of content, right? One good way could be to leverage machine learning. We have seen, I have seen, by the way, last week in Sitecore conference that there are already ways now to connect Sitecore, for example, to IBM Watson, right, and share with IBM Watson a set of content and the tags that they had before, so that whenever new content are created, IBM Watson would be used to recommend tags that should be applied to the content. So that way, it could more or less automate and facilitate the tagging of content when you have a big pool of content to play with. Okay, so that was for the option 2. I want to hand over now to my colleague Adarsh Kumar. So Adarsh is one of our technical leads in Proximity Indian Ocean in Mauritius, and he has done a lot of development around personalization. So he's the best one to talk to you about the most complex options here. Adarsh, all yours.
Hello everyone. So I'll be talking about content performance and profile affinity-based personalization. In this approach, we will use a mix of both worlds, that is performance-driven, which is based on value per visit, and profile-based, which is based on patterns. So in this approach, we will be using the profile and pattern codes to filter content that are appropriate to a user and use the content performance, that is the value, to sort the filtered contents to know which one is best performing for the user for a specific goal. So for this approach to set up, we'll need to have the following items in our CMS defined correctly. That is the marketing goals defined in our CMS, in our case, which is registration, download, brochure request, etc. That is for the finance habitat solution. Normally, out of the box Sitecore will trigger the goals when a page is open. This option is already available, but if we want to trigger goals on specific actions, we'll need to cater these in the custom codes. For the final version is like we'll need to have the profile, which is the profile and profile codes, which is really important to segment both contacts and contents. So this is how we will be segmenting the different contents to show to different persons depending on the patterns. Now, adding context to content scoring. Normally, when we create a content, that is, we'll tag it with at least one or more profile codes, meaning all contents in a specific segment will have the same performance. In a real environment, all contents will not be performing the same towards an audience. And our challenge was to know which content was performing better towards a certain goal. For example, registration. This is where we have used machine learning. That is, all actions performed on the site are being tracked. Example is when a brochure has been requested by a certain user. For example, if a user is interested in loans and he has requested a brochure for loans, we'll keep from the page that the user requested the brochure, we'll keep the page item, we'll keep the goal that the user has done, that is brochure request, and we'll keep also the segment. And with the help of machine learning, the scores of the contents can continuously evolve depending on the actions performed on them. For example, in the finance habitat site, during the World Cup, the content talking about the prizes you can win when you use your credit card. That is, if you register on the site, will have the highest chances to convert visitors who are interested in credit cards benefits. The same content will have a different effect on visitors who are mainly looking for investment solutions. So what machine learning will do is, like, during a certain period, it will see that the content is performing better. So the score of the content will be higher. At a later time, when the content is performing not so good during a later phase, then the score will start to decrease. This too is done by machine learning. So I will go to the next slide to show you what are the different jobs that we do to have the scores updated. Firstly, the actions will be segmented by the type of user, that depending on the patterns assigned to him. These data are sent to Microsoft Cognitive Services, which does some processing on it. The scores for each content according to the goals are calculated on the machine learning engine. Secondly, the scores for each content is sent back to Sitecore to update the items in the CMS. That is, they will have the scores, the tags, and these can be used to personalize the content with personalization rules. Here we have a flow of a user. So I'll take an example to explain the diagram. Firstly, suppose we have a profile named interest with a different patterns: loan, retirement plan, and education plans. So an anonymous user comes on the site. He is already identified as retirement plan in the interest profile due to his previous interactions. He sees a content talking about the low new rate monthly contribution for your retirement. So he is interested in the article. He sees a registration banner CTA present on the page. The user clicks on the registration CTA and registers and continues to navigate. This action is stored in his session. That is, the content which calls him to register, the goal, registration, and the segment of the user, which is the retirement plan. So what we can conclude is that this content might interest other users in the same pattern as his. As the session expires, the data is flushed to the Mongo database, which is a Sitecore analytics database. There are some pipelines that run on a timely basis on the Mongo database, which will aggregate the data and put them in the reporting database. Now, to connect to cognitive services, we need two Sitecore agents. One, which will send the data from the reporting database to cognitive. In the diagram, it is shown as the feed batch. Once the data is available on the machine learning engine, so what we can see that the contents have the different scores, we have another batch which is responsible to take the data from the engine and to update the contents on the CMS, which is shown here as the tagging batch. So once the scores on the CMS are available, the personalization rules can be applied to know which content is best performing for that user. So next, Jonathan will continue with the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Adder. So it's very interesting because what we have seen now is a nice way to actually take everything that Sitecore has to offer, like the profile, the behavior profile solution, but also the performance using value per visit, right? And mixing this with machine learning, right? So that we could actually use the machine learning to figure out kind of different scores depending on the segmentation of consumers. This is very interesting. So you can think about the many different other ways to actually leverage machine learning here, and you will see in a minute that I have a second demonstration to share around machine learning, how we can leverage that with Sitecore. But quick takeaway for this option 3. So basically, it's going to combine both benefits. It's going to leverage the Sitecore content scoring mechanism, but it's also going to leverage the behavior profile solution, right? Thanks to the machine learning, right, we are able to actually go further into the personalization by defining a performance dependent on the audience, which is great, right? Of course, going there would require a bit more development, right? As you have seen in other description, you will have to integrate with a machine learning solution, right? In our cases, we have in the past used Microsoft Cognitive Services, right, with the recommendation solutions, right? So it would require a bit more effort. But if you think about a website that have thousands of content, but a lot of visitors which are coming from different angles, then this could be very interesting. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go through a small demo that unfortunately I'm not able to do it fully live here in this for technical reasons. So I have recorded it, and I'm going to present you how we have been able, right, as a team, to actually build a short prototype based on Sitecore, based on Sitecore Habitat, which is the demonstration website for Sitecore. We have built a solution where we are actually able to leverage machine learning to let us know what is the best content that should be pushed to a content depending on how he reached the website. So basically, we are going to leverage machine learning to personalization based on traffic source. Okay, let me start now. So as you can see, this is a simple financial institutional website that we have been using. It's based on Sitecore Habitat, right? You can see that this is a lead capture website mainly. It's all about capturing leads. You have content on the website, and you can see that we actually have a lot of content, since you even have content categories. You can browse through the categories, right? And you have up to 3 categories, and you even have some more content as soon as you are logged in. So basically, this is a very simple website. And by the way, we also have registration on this website. So as you can see here, it's totally possible to log in and register. So now let's look at the specific section on this website, the banking section, right? This banking section comes with some highlights. As you can see here, these highlights are content which are actually personalized. It's not just the newest content, it's actually personalized content. We can see 4 contents here, actually, but you will see that these are not the only content that are in this category. Actually, this category comes with much more than 4 contents, but here we are seeing 4. Let me show you how it works. I'm going to the back office here, right? I'm going to the back office of the same website, and I'm going to browse through the content in the content editor, right? Going to the content editor, and I'm checking the finance website, the personal state, the personal category, and I'm looking at banking. And here you can see that there is at least 20 contents here and a bit more down there, but there are 20 articles. And we are seeing only 4, if you recall, on the page I have shown to you, but there are actually more than 20 contents. So what we are using here to pull the content is personalization in this specific area of the site. So let's look at how it works. It actually works with performance. What we have done here, where you can see this tooltip with the values inside, we have reflected here the scores that we have, that the system has associated to each content. So you can see that we have 4 types of content scoring: global sign up from email, sign up from media, and product buying. So basically these scores have been calculated thanks to the machine learning, right? As I said before, Sitecore has a way to do content scoring, but thanks to machine learning, we can actually do much more because we can send a lot of usage data to Sitecore to let Sitecore know actually how is this specific content performing for this specific situation. So here you can see that article 1 has a global sign-up score of 2. It's global sign-up score that we want to look at here because I'm a consumer who came directly to this page. I did not come through email or something, right? So we are looking at global sign-up score. So it's 2 for these contents, and it's going to be here 1.9 for article 2, 1.85 for article 3, and 1.77. So basically what we're saying here is that these contents has been pulled because they are the ones who are able to drive registration in the best way for consumers who come through direct traffic and for whom Sitecore has no information at all, right? So this is very important. In this case, I'm coming from direct traffic. Sitecore knows nothing about me, so Sitecore is going to look at basically the value per visit, the global score for this content, right? So it's interesting because now what we're going to see is that when I'm not in this situation, with the very same component, Sitecore may behave a bit differently. So let's assume I'm modifying the URL here and I'm simulating a click on a banner, right? So what I've just done here, I have clicked on the banner. Watch, so consider there is a campaign which has been sent, right? And this banner is present on many different websites, and the URL of this banner contains this from parameter, right? And what you can see, I reached the very same page, but the content is different, right? So the content is different only because I have changed the URL. So the fact that I changed URL here is telling Sitecore that I'm coming from a different source, right? And so thanks for this, you can see that the content that you have seen there are also present here. They are part of the pool of 20 content, and they have been pulled. And they have been pulled in a different way and different order versus what I have done before. So let me show you here how it works. This is Sitecore Experience Editor. So I'm editing the page, the banking category page. And what you can see here is that this is actually one single component. We have not created multiple components to react to the different traffic sources. We have not decided manually what is the content that needs to be pushed depending on where I'm coming from. We just have one single component, and this component is using personalization rules to push the right set of content depending on the traffic source. So let's look at the scores. If you look at the sign up from media score here, it's 2 for this content, so it's high. So that means that this article 3 is already the content which has the highest propensity to drive registration for people who come from media. This one is 1.8, this one as well, and this one 1.78. So basically what we are saying here is really that, again, Sitecore has been looking at scores which has been provided by machine learning, telling us that in the case where the consumer is coming from media banner, then these are the content that perform better. So go ahead and show them to him. But this is very powerful, because what this means is that if we are able to do this with traffic source, think about all the other solutions that you can put in place for this. And we are going to see that this is one traffic source, it's media. As you are building marketing campaigns, you can do other things, right? You can also send through email, right? This is a regular one, right? So let's say that I have received an email, and in this email, I had a link which is driving to the banking category of this website, and I clicked it. So obviously I reached here, right? And eventually I'm not even registered on this website, but because of this parameter, Sitecore would consider that I'm coming from an email, right? And based on that, the content has changed. Again, you can see here it's content 5, 10, 12, and 2. And you can see if you look at the sign up from email score here, it's decreasing, starting from the top. So again, here we are looking at the contents which have the highest chances to drive conversion for consumers who are coming from email. And we have been able to do so because we have sent a lot of usage data to the machine learning based on people who have previously clicked on this content and became a lead afterwards. Right? So this is very interesting. By the way, we're using a specific URL parameter here. Sitecore has an out-of-the-box feature which is called Sitecore Campaigns as a Sitecore 8, which is going to enable us to do this in a much more easy way, because you can create the campaigns directly in the back office and share the parameters with your marketers so that we can use this in their different touch points and different communications. So let's look at another thing now. Let's assume I want to become a lead. So I go ahead and register. So I'm going to type my email address here and type and also provide a password. So just give it a minute for it to be done. So here in this scenario, what I'm going to do to demonstrate is that we don't need to purely leverage the URL parameter. We have other ways to trigger personalization, right? Of course. So here I just registered. I have my dashboard. So I want to go back and check this personalized page, which is in the banking category. And you can see there is no parameter in the URL here. So one may expect that I see the content 1, 2, 3, 4, but no, these are different content again, right? You can see article 11, etc. And the reason for this is that because I have now registered, right, I have already reached a specific goal in the marketing strategy, which is to become a lead. So now that I became a lead, the next thing I need to do is to now buy product. This is why I'm looking at product buying scores here, right? Because this is how Sitecore is looking at what are the content that should be displayed here. Because I'm already a lead, the marketing strategy says that the next action should be to buy product. So Sitecore will look at the product buying scores in order to display the content in the right order for me. So this is very interesting, because what we are saying here is that using machine learning, we could actually combine many different parameters, right, to decide how we want to leverage the automated personalization. So we are calling it automated here because it's not only leveraging the performance-based personalization, right, but it's also leveraging the fact that we use machine learning to check on the situation. And this situation may be, where do I come from, or have I reached a specific goal in the marketing strategy? Typically, have I already become a lead? And if so, then I need to look at a different type of content scoring. Okay. So this is the end of the demo. So we are almost at the end of our presentation. Quickly going through the 3 different options that we have seen. We have seen the content performance-based personalization, where we look at the value per visit, which is basically a content scoring, right? And based on this performance, we're able to display the content which have performed the best. This would require some development effort, but does not require any ongoing human intervention. And the profile interest version would require more manual effort, because one still needs to tag these contents, of course, in a manual way, but it's using the behavior profile, which is very simple to implement. So this one is probably the simplest one to implement. And the last one, of course, would mix both and leverage machine learning to make the personalization a bit more meaningful. So Thank you for this. If you still want to read a bit more about this personalization and how it's done at scale, you can go through the blog of Hisham Namuya. He's one colleague of mine. He's very good at Sitecore. He's been an MVP for 2 years now, and he's written a document about how to do this in a more technical way, right? I'm a strategy MVP, and what I have written, you can read on LinkedIn eventually, is an article which is basically explaining what we have gone through today, purely with the, I would say, marketing and strategy approach versus purely technical approach. So yes, thank you very much for this. So this is time for us to go through the questions, right, George?
Yep, thank you very much, Jonathan. If you guys have any question, let's deal with them right now. So there are a few questions that came in. One of them is from Charlene. She's asking, how do you deal with GDPR as you can't personalize the content if the customer did not agree with it?
So that's a very good question. So there is a very strong concern around GDPR on many aspects, and one of them, of course, is personalization. We have run into this already. And of course, for some of our major clients, this is a big concern, but this is also a big concern for Sitecore. So what Sitecore has done is that in the version 9 of Sitecore, there is now out of the box, right, a way to actually leverage the right to forget. So basically, we can very easily implement a way for consumer to say, I don't want you to use my data anymore. So what will happen is that Sitecore would automatically remove all the information we have about this contact from XDB, so we are not able to personalize for him anymore. So this is about Sitecore 9. Of course, they have been working on something for Sitecore 8 as well, but it will come to life only in a few weeks. It's still not there, so I don't have the exact date, so that can be checked. If it's for Sitecore 8, I think it's coming to Sitecore 8.2.7.
Okay, next question. So it looks like for every page, there are a lot of calculations that need to be performed to decide what content appears in a page. How is the load time affected for a busy website? How does it affect caching of resources? How would you balance performance and functionality?
That's a good question. So that's a very good question. And as we were going through personalization for major clients, we basically started with, okay, first of all, how big do we want to go for a first launch, right? Meaning, if you look at the website I was showing before, the finance website, with all these content boxes on it, like maybe 20 boxes on one page, of course, what we are recommending is not to personalize everything. So this is why on the banking category section you have seen, we have decided to select only 4 pieces of content to personalize, right, out of the full page. It could be even less, right? To be honest, with some clients, we have started only doing this with 1 piece of content being personalized, and we ramp up afterwards. So that's one way to do it, to control the performance impact by not personalizing too many contents on one single page. That's one thing. Of course, when we are talking performance, we also need to worry about caching. And what we have done is that, of course, it's very difficult to cache the full page since it will differ from one consumer to another. So what we do is that we actually have the content we want to display as part of indexes, and we would pull directly from the indexes depending on the personalization rules. This is a way to mitigate this, but it's not absolute. So this is why we really recommend to not go too crazy in terms of how many personalized content we want to display on one single page. Just to finalize on this one, when it comes to performance, we obviously have the technical performance, but there is also to consider I would say the business performance. So this is something important because we have demonstrated a few out-of-the-box solutions, but most of them would still require some effort. So at the end of the day, the business will need to understand what is the value that I get from doing personalization, and this is something that we recommend to actually worry about as you are building personalization. You should look at what Sitecore has to offer in terms of Sitecore analytics, because you are able to pull a lot of information from there, and you are effectively able to, if you want to do a bit of development, to demonstrate how business objectives are met depending on consumers who get personalized experience versus consumers who do not get personalized experience. So that's something that we recommend looking after as you implement personalization.
Okay, let's move on to the next question quickly. So if we apply machine learning in this way, have you measured the impact on performance? Because I guess the question is machine learning is a lot heavier than simple rule-based.
So the way we have, and others, maybe you can talk to the way we have implemented machine learning is that we are not using this in a live way, right? So the way we do it for machine learning is that we leverage machine learning to provide us some scores that we would retrieve maybe every day, right? But we definitely don't want to be pulling from an external system, right, in a live way. That would not work. That would never work. So we are basically using, that's why others was talking about batches, because we want to do this in a batched manner. So daily would be fairly sufficient. And again, machine learning, it's all about pushing data to machine learning and giving machine learning some time to actually do the computation and get the output from it. So we definitely don't want to do anything which may be live, but as soon as you start talking about batch, what we need to do is to collect the scoring, the ratings that we get from the machine learning and apply it to our contents in our system, in Sitecore, so that there is no forth and back as the consumer rates the content. Others, would you maybe, I think this is the right way to put it, right?
Yes, actually for the machine learning, it is already done via batch system. So this batch runs twice daily. It just updates the score which is kept in our CMS, which gets updated in the index file just for performance issues. So we don't query the CMS too much. We query only indexes. So yeah, for the machine learning, it's mainly batch. Doesn't have like the real-time impact on it.
Okay, fantastic, guys. I think that's all the time for questions that we have right now. So if we haven't answered your questions so far, please don't hesitate to contact us. So guys, I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time of your day to present this webinar to everyone who joined us today. We hope you found this interesting, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.